All right. Hi, Kennedy. How are you?
Hey, Nicole. I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. I appreciate you coming back onto the podcast. So I really want to talk to you about this new show that just came on Netflix. It's called Down to Earth, and it has Zac Efron as one of the hosts.
Woo!
And it's about sustainability. I really, I want to kind of get your first impressions of it, because I was just surfing through Netflix and this popped on, and their little intro was, in this show we are going to travel around the world and check out these sustainable practices and ideas, and kind of try and learn about what other people are doing around the world. And I just had to laugh from the irony of the fact that they're going to go look for sustainable ideas while they travel around the world.
Yeah, which is like not sustainable.
So I was kind of laughing at that, but I was like, well, I'll give it a try. Like, I'm always curious to see the new sustainable TV shows. So what did you think about it?
Well, so I had heard just briefly about it. And it was kind of more from the standpoint of like Zac Efron's in it, so we need to watch it. It wasn't like, oh, you need to watch it because it's about sustainability. It's like, no, Zac Efron's rugged and handsome, and you need to watch it. So
he's shirtless in the first episode.
Can't really complain. So I mean, first opinions, it's great,
right?
Beautiful, but yeah, I was a little skeptical about it just because I know Zac Efron isn't as into sustainability, or really, at least from my knowledge, hasn't spoken too much about the environment. So I was just curious of how well those conversations were going to go with these experts kind of around the world.
You're right.
And I think after watching it, I think they did a good job of reaching the general public. I think for people who know nothing about what's going on, I think that's a kind of it's an okay thing to watch. Keeps your attention. It's entertaining. They talk about food, and they do they do like that spa thing, that Viking spa. Yeah. Okay, I don't know how that's related to what we're talking about, but that's fine.
Oh, sorry.
No. Go ahead.
Well, I just thought I kind of see it as like a weird little travel show that they did. And so like they wanted to do the traveling, so they wanted to see cool places, they wanted to try different cuisine, but they also wanted to like learn. I think it's great that they had the sustainability factor into it, which is great, because once again, I think they had really good intentions. They wanted to spread awareness of these ideas, and they had the opportunity to go check out these sustainable practices and ideas, and they wanted to bring it to the world. So like, who better person to, well, there's probably better people, but who's going to bring the attention towards it?
Yeah, and we'll take
Zac Efron, right?
I mean, got my attention, that's for sure. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, is it the best show about sustainability? No. Is it the worst? No. I mean,
it was entertaining.
It kept my attention. I mean, they brought up some stuff that I, didn't know about Iceland, which I mean, I didn't really know too much about Iceland to begin with.
Right.
So
to clarify, their first episode is they travel to Iceland, and they're looking at the different sustainable technologies that they've implemented in Iceland. So that's why we're mentioning Iceland.
Yes. Yeah. So they were in Iceland, and they really focused on their geothermal techniques. And I thought that was really interesting how quickly the country transitioned. Because I mean, I looked into Iceland's history on their energy sources, and seeing how they were really dependent on oil and coal, like back in the 70s. And I think they mentioned this a little bit in the documentary, but it finally the people of Iceland came to the conclusion that like, hey, we can't afford these influx of oil and coal prices. You know, we need to be more sustainable and rely on ourselves and have a stable economy. So it seemed like everybody was on board.
Yeah.
You know, the government, the municipalities, and the residents were all like, we need to do something.
Yeah.
So
do you know why they were so dependent on it, on the oil and coal?
I don't know. I think that was just kind of the way it always was. And I mean, I don't really know what Iceland's, I don't think they sit on like an oil reserve or a coal mine. I didn't really see any of that. So I think they were just really dependent.
Their natural resources. I feel like it's probably kind of the same situation as Puerto Rico. It is probably just an island sustainability issue where they're very limited on what they have access to because they're an island. And so especially if you're an island where the topography is kind of the same, like you're not really, there's not a lot of plethora of resources, right? So if they want to be modern, they have to import these resources to be modern. Oh, geez.
To keep up, to grow, to build their economy.
Yeah. Well, and everywhere else was doing that. So why, you got
to keep up.
Why not do that there as well? So, I think a lot of island countries are trying to go in that direction. They're really tired of being reliant on these imports for their well-being and welfare, Yeah. So I think it's really awesome to kind of provide a little bit more information. So as you said that they were using oil and coal for their energy resources, and then they started moving to their natural resources, which is geothermal and hydropower.
Yeah,
those were the two major things that they were doing, and that's what they present in the first episode of Down to Earth, and which I think is really cool because hydropower is pretty popular, but the geothermal is not very common.
Yeah, I did notice that it was interesting that was their choice, because I mean, I know in the US it makes up 1% or something, like, I know it's really small.
Yeah, I don't know.
I know it's almost like almost kind of a waste to not even. I remember when I was doing my teaching job and we would teach the kids about renewable energies, and every once in a while one kid would ask, what about geothermal? And our response was always like, well, it's so small, you kind of learn that on your own, but we don't use it. So.
Yeah. Well, why don't we explain what geothermal energy is?
Okay. Do you want to
take
that away, Nicole?
I looked into it because I wanted to make sure. So geothermal energy is pretty much using the heat of the earth to power turbines. So this is like a pretty basic way of how they do it, but you take water, you pump it down into the earth, and then the heat of the earth, there could be like magma underneath, lava. There's two different terms, but and then that heats up the water and that creates steam, and then they have another drilled hole where the steam escapes and it comes up through the earth, and then it rotates these turbines, which generates the electricity. Yeah. And so they in the show they took you to one of those power plants and they kind of show that. And one thing that I kind of wanted to bring into light is one thing that they say is that they want to try and bring this knowledge of this technology to like across the world, or specifically to the US, or maybe even Europe. And the one problem with geothermal energy is that it's very location specific.
Exactly.
And so it's really great in Iceland because they have a lot of volcanic activity, and so there's a lot of heat near the surface, which they showed with this black sand. And I thought that was really cool.
That
the
was
black
really cool.
sand. They had black sand along this lake near the shore of a lake, and the ground was so hot that it was boiling whatever water was like within the sand, so they could cook food.
Yeah,
it was so hot.
I thought that was really interesting, and just kind of like a side note on that, just seeing how they're so in tuned with nature that it creates like a bond with them and how and their livelihood. You know, I mean, the guy that was showing them how to break the bread, he said, like, my grandmother's been doing this for years. So it's something that they're really in tune with the nature around them. And I feel like that's really hard to find nowadays.
Yeah.
So
they've been using the heat of the land to help benefit them for like cooking and stuff like that for who knows how long.
Yeah.
And so it's cool that they try and take those old practices and make them modern and help them use it for energy.
Yeah. Yeah. And I thought it was really interesting and how that's now I feel like almost kind of become part of their culture, because even when they visited that restaurant and the cook was feeding him reindeer. He's like, no, I shot and killed this reindeer myself. I'm like, that's intense, but really cool. I mean, how many cooks can say that, like, this pig I actually, you know, the carnitas is the pork that I actually
love this across the countryside.
Right. Yeah. For my hunting trip last winter. You know, that's not something you hear very often.
Yeah. So, do you think we could use geothermal energy elsewhere?
Yeah, I think if the location is viable, I feel like totally. And I think the first episode of Down to Earth should be an inspiration for regions where they can harness geothermal. That can be a great example. And I also think for places that don't necessarily have that option or it's just not viable, I think just how Iceland got to this point, how they were able to transform their economy and their mindset to become more sustainability and eco-friendly. I think just that alone is really inspiring in itself.
Yeah, that's very true. I think it's kind of it's kind of proof of concept. That you can take these renewable energy sources and you can live off of them. Like, you can power your whole electrical grid off of renewable energy. You don't need coal or oil or whatever. You can use these other sources. They're very viable. Yeah. Something that I've always kind of thought about is people always think of like renewable energies as like solar. That's usually the big thing. And how do I put this? So what people usually see as like a downfall with renewable energy is that it's very location dependent. So you can only have a wind farm where it's windy. Yeah. You can only have solar panels where there's a lot of sun. But I don't think that's actually a bad thing. I think that's just something that we have to kind of work around. We're sure solar energy isn't something that you can use, say, in Washington, but it's a great source here in Arizona where we have sun 24/7. We have too much of it. Yeah. And so 24/7? Okay, maybe not 24/7.
I think we have it like, 300 days out of the year, I think. So that feels like 24/7.
It's so hot at night that it feels like the sun is still going.
Yeah.
Now my face is red because I said something stupid. It's okay. We'll keep going. I know my nose gets so itchy. Anyways, we have a lot of sun here.
Yes.
And so like it would make sense for stop laughing. You're a loser. It makes sense for us to use it for solar to be used here, but I'm sure there's something in Washington that we can use. And so just because we've had a system where coal can be used everywhere doesn't mean how do I put it? Just because coal can be used everywhere doesn't mean that we have to use one type of renewable energy everywhere. Like it doesn't have to be standard.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with you. And I think, in the Southwest, we can use a lot of solar power. I think that would be our great number one. I think also invest in, hydropower and any wind power, to keep our, to keep us having, other options. But I think like in Washington, their number one should be hydropower. Get a lot of rain.
Right.
Don't invest in solar. You're just going to be disappointed. Our California should be wind, or really anywhere on the coast can use a lot of wind power. So, but my biggest thing is that I don't understand is people fight renewables so much. And it's really difficult for me because I see the issues with it. And I think most of the time people say it's money, but I mean, yeah, there's a lot of upfront cost and this transition is going to be a little difficult. But if you look at the big picture, if you take a step back, we're going to be saving more money than we were. I don't know. That's something that's really difficult for me to put myself in that person's shoes and try to understand where they're coming from.
Yeah. I think one of the big driving factors to do renewable energy is that it's all in the name. Oil and coal are non-renewable sources, so that means there's a limited supply.
Exactly.
So it may not be in the next 10, 15 years, but 100 years down the line, we're not going to have any more.
Yeah.
So why not make the investments now? We had to invest in coal power plants.
Yeah.
So like,
why can't we invest in solar plants?
Right,
why?
yeah.
Why is that not something we can do?
Yeah. So it's that, you also kind of bring up a good point, because I was listening to a Joe Rogan podcast.
Okay.
I wish I wrote down the lady's name, but it was very recent, and she wrote a book on, what was it called? About climate change denial. And specifically in like the oil industry and the coal industry. And she talks about like the kind of the mindset of people who are in those industries and who specifically were hiding the data that their industry was, how it was impacting the climate. So they were hiding the data, or they were trying to change it so it didn't seem like coal was having such a big impact on climate change. And so I think she was kind of looking into why those people would do something like that, like what's going on there. And I think this is kind of the same with people who like work in coal plants or coal miners, or people who are in these fields, these industries. They work in these industries. They people get really tied to their job, where it's kind of an identity for them. I'm a coal miner. That's who I am. And so when we start saying like, well, we kind of gotta get rid of that, they're like, well, that's my whole identity. Like, you can't take that away from me.
Yeah.
And so I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges we're going to have to face, is convincing people to it's okay.
Yeah.
You can do something else, or like we'll help you, or something like that.
Something.
You know?
Yeah. And I just always found that interesting because you don't really hear that in other jobs. You don't hear an accountant say, well, I'm an accountant. How dare you take away my accounting job? It's like, okay, I'm an accountant. I get fired from my accounting job. I'm going to figure something else out if I can't be an accountant.
Yeah.
I always found that really interesting. How did that narrative come about? How did people get so locked into, and I don't know, maybe it is, maybe I'm just not hearing those voices. Maybe other people, you know.
Come on, Kennedy.
I know. I'm the worst. I don't know, but I just feel like we mostly hear it a lot with coal miners saying that this is my identity, but I don't hear that narrative from any other occupations or professions that strongly.
Yeah.
At least.
Well, probably because theirs aren't under attack. We're not going to be getting rid of accountants
True. That makes sense. But
we're after you next, accountants.
Coming to get you. I don't know. But then again, it's not like we're saying we don't want to get rid of coal completely. I think that's... I think that is unrealistic.
Yeah.
We still need coal. We still need oil. That it still will be around, but do we need it as much as we're dependent on it now? No.
Yeah, I think that's one of the big things is we need to start moving towards this more. Moving towards renewable energies. Yeah. At least let's do like 50%, 50-50.
Yeah. Can we start with that? Is that okay? Can we
it creates more jobs, right?
It does create more jobs. And I think if you offer training, be like, hey, we're cutting back on your industry, but we're willing to train you for free and you can go into this field.
Yeah.
But I don't know. That's always, it can be a touchy and very difficult conversation to maneuver. So
yeah, I think that's one of the important things I feel like I'm saying there's so many important things. There's a lot of important things when it comes to sustainability, but I think something that we end up struggling with is we need to kind of be compassionate towards those in those industries.
Oh yeah.
I think a lot of them don't mean to harm the environment, except for maybe like the top executives, but we won't get into that.
Yeah.
That'll be another podcast.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any, they're not trying to cause harm.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a lot of issues where people, they kind of blame, like environmentalists will blame people for being in the coal. Like, how can you be a coal miner? Like, that's just so horrible.
Yeah.
And like, we just need to get rid of this, and you're destroying the planet. It's like, okay, calm down. Like, they're people. They need their livelihoods.
Yeah.
They're for people who are supposed to be so compassionate towards like the environment, we need to work on our compassion towards people.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's people who are against our ideas and beliefs. Because I mean, you're not gonna win people over by getting in their face and pointing your finger at them. That instantly just turns people off. So you have to put yourself in their situation. Okay, that maybe they grew up in a town where that was the only job you could have. That was my father was a coal miner, my grandfather or my grandmother was a coal miner. It's like
grandmother.
I mean, you never know. You never know. I try to be equal.
World War I.
You never know.
Sorry.
You don't know. But yeah, so just being like, well, that's all I've known. You can't blame somebody for not knowing something, for not being able to predict the future. I mean, they had to provide for their family somehow.
Yeah.
So,
and that's one of the things that that's what I like about sustainability, is that it kind of goes beyond the environmental movement, and it takes into account, I kind of feel like, everything.
Yeah.
And so sustainability has these 3 pillars that is kind of encompasses everything. And so there's the environmental, like the environment is a big part, but there's also the social aspect. So they have like equality in education and physical well-being of people. And what is the other big one? Like income equality, making sure poverty.
Yeah.
So that's one of the big things about the social. So we have to take care of the environment, but we also need to take care of the people as well.
Yeah.
And then there's also the economic side, which I feel like it's always like the economists against the environmentalists.
Oh, totally. I feel like that's how it is.
But with sustainability, is they incorporate the economic side, which I guess the income equality would actually be under the economic.
Oh, I'd say it encompasses both.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a mixture.
It's a little diagram.
I know. I'm picturing like a circle diagram in my mind of like, yeah, no, it's in this little area.
Yeah. But yeah, so then they have the economic side, which is making sure that the economy is doing well. People can build industries and people can thrive economically.
Yeah.
And so I think that's it's making, I guess we can start getting into this, but for the UN and the Paris Agreement, like the whole climate change goals is to leave nobody behind, which I think is great. I think that's a really important thing to consider. It's not just environmentalists trying to take down the oil industry. It's globally people coming together and wanting to improve human civilization, human well-being.
Yeah.
And I don't know. So I just think that's really great. Before we get into the next topic, was there anything else that you wanted to talk about with the Down to Earth?
I think the only something that really stood out to me was when they went to visit the waterfall and how they were talking. Okay, well, first of all, the ranger was hilarious. That was really funny when they kept asking him questions and
like,
how many liters of water went through here? I don't know.
That would be me as a ranger. Be like, I can't recall facts to save my life. Yeah. It's pretty though, right?
Yeah, it's beautiful. Just a lot of water, a lot of people come. That's about it. I thought that was funny, but I did actually like how they talked about that Iceland wants to have a balance between harnessing nature and preserving it.
Oh, yeah.
I like that they recognize that, and that I was like, all right, there's some waterfalls we're going to use for hydropower that they need, but we're going to leave the rest of them to get us more in touch with nature because it does do a lot of great things for us emotionally.
Yeah, that's
really
a good point. One thing that we need to be careful of, especially with the renewable energies, is the planet can provide a lot for us, but we also have to create that balance where we're not just taking everything it can give us.
Exactly.
We have to appreciate it for what it is.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So that was the one thing that I think that was really, really cool that they added in.
Yeah, I think that's a really big point to bring across, is because sometimes people will just see, oh, well, that waterfall can make me money. And we shouldn't be thinking just in the lines of how can this benefit me, but like how can it benefit the whole?
Yeah.
So I like that. Yeah. That's a pretty big thing to consider.
Yeah. You have to find a balance. And I think sustainability takes into account that balance, being able to see that,
we're all connected.
We're all in the circle of life. I keep going back to like Disney's Lion King, like Hakuna Matata, and then going back to Disney's like Pocahontas. Right? She's like showing John Smith. They're like running through the forest and telling him to appreciate things. That just keeps running through my head. Anyways, we can move on to the UN stuff.
Be one with nature.
Yes.
Well, yeah. So recently, I think they came out with it in June, where the UN just released their 2020 Sustainable Development Goals report. Do you think you can explain what sustainable development goals are? Ooh, testing you.
Oh, here we go. Look through my notes here. No, so
we studied. We swear.
We swear. We know what we're talking about. I have actually all the goals written down. There's a lot, so that way I am remembering. No, so the UN Sustainable Development goals is basically these goals that encompass pretty much what the 3 pillars of sustainability: people, planet, profit. And they rate each country, each participating country, because not every country is part of this. I don't believe so.
So not all of them are, but I think they are still, to the best of their ability, they are still measuring everybody's path towards that.
Yeah.
So even if you're not actively working towards those goals, and
you're still being graded. I'm joking.
To provide shame.
Pretty much. We're just going to shame you.
Oh, shit. And the U.S. is all in red.
Oh, that was really sad. We'll talk about that later. But that was really sad. No, so they have these 17 goals. And some of them are no poverty, zero hunger, gender equality, let's see, sustainable cities and communities, life below water, life on land, peace, justice, and strong institutions, partnership. I mean, the list goes on. Clean energy. But just to get an idea of what these goals are. So they really try to encourage these companies to improve on these goals. And then, every so often they'll do a check-in and rate them and see how they're doing, and they'll rate each country.
Yeah, so these were created, I think, through the Paris Agreement.
Sure. I don't know.
It was created back then. It's related to the United Nations and their goals towards a sustainable future.
Yeah.
And so the global leaders came together and they created these goals. And some of them are pretty difficult for countries to reach. Mm-hmm. Some people are already have reached these goals, and some people are going backwards,
which I found really interesting.
Yeah. So anyways, they released this report, and the UN, they're really trying to provide this data and this information that they've collected that's easy for the average person to read and understand. Do you feel like they did that okay?
I kind of have a little bit of a problem with their data and how they present it, because I wanted to compare Iceland to the U.S.
Yes.
And where they were ranked. So the U.S. ranked, out of 193 countries, they ranked 31, and Iceland ranked 26. So they're relatively close. But then when you actually dive deep and look at why they were ranked as such, all of the U.S. was red in almost all the goals. We are just either staying the same, we're going back, we're barely improving. It was really upsetting. But then in Iceland, they had a few of their goals were in green. They were really improving, doing really well. And I just didn't, I felt like they should have been ranked higher and we should have been ranked a little bit lower.
Yeah. To provide clarification, so for the report, it's online. Mm-hmm. I'll provide a link to that in the description. But one of the big things that they did is they provided an
interactive map.
Interactive map.
Do you know what the website is?
It's called Dashboards /SDG something.
It's probably on the UN's website. You probably look there.
Yeah. But what was I saying? Oh yeah, so they have an interactive map where you can click on a country. It's a map of the whole world and all the countries, and then they have it broken down by the different goals. So there's 17 of those, and then each goal has these indicators, and which is things information that they're researching for the data. so we'll just go with income equality. And so they base it off of like the wage gap between men and women.
Yeah.
In all the different countries. How close are they to this certain goal that they have? And so they did green for if you've reached it, if you reached the goal.
Or if you're really close.
Yeah.
Yeah. Green's the best.
And then, so then they kind of just go down this color gradient. So you got yellow, you got orange, and then you got red. Red means you haven't made any progress or you're going back.
Yeah, you're really struggling.
And so they'll color the different countries with their grading.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what you mean when the U.S. is all in red.
For the most part, we were like orange and red. I mean, maybe a little bit yellow. Yeah, so I just felt like that was really misleading. You really had to dive in deep as to why each were ranked the way they were, which I feel like the average person wouldn't go that in depth. I think just because you and I, this is what we like to do.
We kind of were like, wait,
why
is
this
country this color? This doesn't make sense.
Yeah, for us to like ask questions and ask why.
Yeah, I think they're really trying to present it in an easy way to understand. So colors is really simple.
Great.
And you can just click on it like, oh, how are they doing with life below water?
Yeah.
Sea?
Was it
Land?
Life below water.
There you go.
That's what it was.
And you can see how all the different countries in the world are doing based off of the colors. And red, bad, green, good. This is pretty simple, right?
Easy.
And which I think is great. It kind of gives a basic understanding of what the heck is going on in the world when it comes to sustainability, or at least these UN
goals that they have.
But I think I end up having an issue where I'd be like, well, wait, that doesn't make sense. Why is this one country this one color? Mm-hmm. Like, I feel like, because like we'll go with the U.S. We weren't doing very good with like poverty and food security.
We're hunger.
Yeah,
hunger was almost like staying the same, or we were going down.
Yeah, or income. Worse. And I was just like I know the U.S. isn't great.
Yeah,
but
it can't be that bad, can we?
Yeah, and usually the weird thing is like compared to like some of the other countries, they were supposedly doing better than us on those, and I was like, I don't know how they're getting that. But I think one thing that I noticed is that some countries were being based off of more indicators than others.
How so?
So I had it in my notes, but so one of the big things that I noticed was China.
Okay.
China is an interesting situation.
They're special.
Don't want to be mean.
No.
And they had quite a bit of sustainable development goals green, like more than you would expect. And so like one of the big things was poverty.
Yeah.
China supposedly has met the poverty goal, the no poverty goal, and the U.S. hasn't. And I'm like,
that's interesting.
So I looked at the indicators, so what they're measuring,
exactly.
Right? Okay. And the U.S. was being graded on more. They had like 5 indicators, while China only had 2 showing. And then there's also this thing where sometimes they didn't have the data for certain indicators, and that was kind of like not included. I don't really know how they did that. What they did with the countries or the indicators that they couldn't measure or they didn't have data on, how that impacted the
algorithm there,
their rating,
yeah.
Because if China is missing all these indicators, then I feel like, but they're doing good on 2. Why are they being ranked as meeting the goal
when they only have 2 of the 5 or whatever
that other
say
countries
that's
are
the
being
max.
graded on? So I think that was my big issue. That may just be explained away if you look further into it.
Maybe, yeah. But
I think you had some things about Iceland when it comes to the Sustainable Development Goals.
I think. Yeah. I feel like for the most part they were reaching most of their goals, and they were doing. Well, at first, before I dug into it, it said that they were ranked, I don't know, maybe like orange in their CO2 emissions. And I thought, oh, hold up.
Yeah, was that for the climate action one?
I believe so. I can't remember exactly which goal it was, but I think it was the climate action. That's what I didn't write that down. I should have. But yeah, it said major CO2 challenges remain.
Yeah.
And if you just looked at that, you'd just be like, well, Zac Efron, you're a liar. You didn't. What are you doing? You know?
Yeah, because
it would contradict itself to what we just watched.
Yeah, the Down to Earth, they said that, and this is, I think, a key point, is their electricity is 100% renewable.
Mm-hmm. That's, yeah. So that's where this, if you didn't really look into it, you would just, think that.
Oh, they have no emissions.
No emissions. It's done. But then you don't think of, okay, well, they're still importing goods, and that's one of the indicators that they're measuring this on.
For the climate action.
For the climate action, correct.
Yeah.
I mean, they still have to import a lot of their produce. So that causes CO2 emissions, and
the ships
that come
use
in,
a lot of
and
fuel.
They have a lot of tourism coming in, so there's a lot of planes coming in and out, and ships and cruises. So that all is taken into consideration. Yeah,
and I think that's kind of one of the big things that I kind of saw was when you're looking at CO2 emissions, it's more than just electricity generation. Mm-hmm. So electricity generation is like 25%. And then you also have transportation and agriculture. And you have all these other little things that add up to your CO2 emissions. And so I think it's really great that Iceland is able to have their electricity 100% renewable. I don't think many countries can say that. I think that's awesome. Yeah. That's a great accomplishment. Yeah. Well, so they, on the Sustainable Development Goals, I thought it was kind of weird. They had climate action, which was related to CO2 emissions. But then they also had clean energy, affordable and clean energy. Affordable energy and clean energy was one of the other goals. And Iceland was doing really good on that.
Yeah.
So, because what is it called? I keep wanting to say it, hydrotherapy.
Hydrotherapy.
Geothermal. Geothermal energy is a clean energy.
Yeah.
So and since they're using that a lot, that's why they're ranking really well in the clean energy.
Yeah, and that it's affordable.
Yeah.
So, yeah, just like little things like that I think was a little, if you just looked at it and didn't play with it, it would just, not all things would make sense. So I think you really have to dig into it. But I think for the most part, I think the UN is doing a great job in measuring these goals. I can't imagine how complicated this is to measure and help other countries to figure this out. I mean, this is such a wicked problem. I mean, kudos to them for. I think this is a great step.
Yeah. All right, you said the acronym again. You gotta explain what a wicked problem is.
Oh, a wicked problem. Okay, so a wicked problem is a very complex problem with a lot of moving parts that you cannot see any of its outcomes. You think it could be,
that's right.
you think it could end well, and it could, but then 20 years later, it could actually have been a really bad idea. And now I wouldn't say bad idea, but you're unforeseen consequences.
Yes.
So, and you can get unforeseen benefits.
Yeah.
That you never know.
Yeah.
So it's a problem that, just think of like a massive spider web. It's all over the place. You don't know where it's going to go. You don't know what's going to come out of it. So that's a wicked problem.
Yeah. So that's one of the foundations of sustainability is that a lot of the problems that sustainability is trying to address are wicked problems where there's no simple solution. And when people are like, oh, I know how to fix this.
No, you don't.
And then they try to implement it, and then all these negative consequences can occur. Most of the time they do.
I would say most of the time they do. And it's not that when you're trying to solve you go into this, you're presented with an issue and you think, okay, what are possible unforeseen consequences? And you do your best to try and not let those happen, but it's a wicked problem. So something will come out of it that you weren't expecting.
Yeah.
So, and I think you have to be okay with that.
Yeah. Or, to be, you just gotta move.
Go with the flow.
It's like,
all right, something
roll with the punches.
Like it. There we go.
Yeah. So you kind of have to. You also have to be adaptable. So maybe the solution is in the right direction, but now there's these other things that you need to address that weren't there before.
Exactly.
Doesn't mean it's not a bad solution. It's you just gotta expand upon it.
Yeah. Yeah, you gotta keep working. You'll always be working at it. It's never ending.
Yeah. I think that's kind of something to really keep in mind is, especially as like sustainability professionals, kind of have this desire to make things perfect, to make things better. And we really need to kind of be careful. It's like, it's never going to be perfect. There's always going to be some kind of issue. Like people back in the 1600s looking at us today be like, wow, that is such an amazing society. Look at all the technology.
Yeah.
And we're like, well, but we have this issue and we have that issue, and like,
it's really not that great. But no, and I think that idea applies to like anything you do. Nothing will be perfect. And you have to be okay with that.
right.
So
work is all.
Oh, who's here?
All these noises.
I know.
We were expecting cats to disturb us, but instead it's our sound guy who plays with video, with sound, and then we get a doorbell. Like, come on.
It will never be perfect, and we're okay with that.
It's okay. People stopped watching by this
point. Oh, yeah. They've turned us off.
Like, wow. Well, so was there anything that stood out to you?
Concerning the goals, I think, I really think for the most part, they did a really good job. I did write down the top 5 countries who are doing the best. Drum roll, please.
I wonder who that is.
Number 1 is Sweden.
Who would have thought?
Who would have guessed? But yeah,
socialists.
Oh, they're the worst. No, I'm joking. So it would be number 1 is Sweden. Number 2 is Denmark. And then we have Finland, France, Germany, and Italy. Oh, no, not Italy. My apologies. That was for something else.
Oh, okay.
Sweden, Denmark, Finland, France, Germany. Those are our top 5.
Germany
was number 5.
Yeah, Germans are pretty awesome.
You're just saying that because you're German.
Yeah. They got the Lederhosens. I don't know how you say it. Okay, yeah. So, well, yeah, I was. Sweden was definitely doing the best. I think one of their biggest things is that they were doing really good on the social welfare.
Yeah, they were doing really
sides.
well.
And the economic. Their economy is great.
Yeah.
No matter what you say. capitalists. They are a capitalist
How do
economy.
you really feel, Nicole?
Oh my goodness. Don't even get me started. But yeah, they were doing really good. I think there's only a couple things where they weren't doing so great.
I don't think they were in red for anything, were they?
Yeah, I think they were in yellow and orange for a few
things, but
I think I thought it was funny. Ironically funny, like for the CO2 emissions.
Okay.
Nobody was doing good.
Yeah.
Nobody.
Yeah, that's something. That's something we really need to work on.
It's like this is the whole point of this whole thing was the climate action. And we're just like, nope,
not gonna happen. Well, I think trying to be hopeful and seeing the glass half full is being like, well, if we tackle 16 of the 17 issues, maybe the CO2 emissions will go down. Maybe it'll just fall into place. It'll be a domino effect.
Well, they actually showed this. What was it called? They had this little diagram on one of their web pages for the report.
Okay.
And it talked about the 6 transformations to kind of reach sustainable communities and cities and a sustainable world.
Yeah.
So like one of the first things to do is education, remove poverty, food security. So make sure all the basic needs are met.
Makes sense.
And then I can't remember the rest. But so like that's kind of like the first steps that people need to take in order to become more sustainable. Because you can't be implementing sustainable technologies if all of your people are starving.
Exactly.
Yeah. It wasn't on the map, so.
Oh, no, I was just looking. I wrote down something, but I think this was... Did you read the part about they offered solutions for recovering from COVID?
I did not see that.
Okay.
But I know, I guess that is a big thing, is that the report was like COVID and the SDG. SDG is the Sustainable Development Goals.
Yeah. Sorry, no, keep going. That's just what I thought I had written down what you were talking about, or if maybe if it was the same thing, but it wasn't. This was what they offered solutions for COVID concerning what goals countries should be tackling. So I'm sorry. Keep going.
Yeah, you're okay. Well, yeah, so there's these transformations, and so like halfway there is sustainable agriculture and like sustainable land use and ocean use, right? So making sure that our resources are still available in the future. And they're kind of like a step-by-step process to reach sustainable communities, sustainable world. Right? Okay. So it was just a little diagram that they created, but I thought it was kind of interesting. Like, you have to take care of the basic necessities first before you can even get to above and beyond.
Well, that's what they talk about a lot in psychology. Oh. You have to get these basic human needs, where it's like food, shelter, water, before you can start tackling any psychological issues that you might be dealing with. You have to make sure you're in the safe space to move forward. Oh, okay. So I think there's a lot of similarities between that and psychology. Yeah. Yeah. Which makes sense. Yeah. You can't be like, hey, save the whales. And you're like, well, I have no house. So how am I going to do this? I don't know. It's like, why am I going to give it a home? I don't even have a home. Yeah. You know? Yeah. No, that's a really important, that's a big thing to consider. Yeah. So that's interesting. What did you write down about COVID? Oh, I don't know how I stumbled across it, but I did. I just kept scrolling and I was like, wait, how am I now reading about COVID? But they talked about countries that are recovering. I really don't want to say recovering because I don't know if we are fully recovering from COVID. I know the U.S. we're having a much more difficult time than other countries. Just a little. Just just
minor.
so minute.
It's because we're just so big and awesome.
I know, we're the best. So this is not political, I swear. No, so it was just talking about how these other countries have been approaching the certain goals and how tackling some of the 17 goals, how tackling some of these will help improve your recovery from COVID.
Okay.
Because since COVID has created such a impact on like the health industry, the education, inequalities, that they were saying those are the ones that you need to focus on the most.
Yeah, one of the things that they said was the outbreak, the COVID-19 outbreak, has been impacting the country's ability to address these goals.
Yeah. So they were giving them recommendations to, hey, focus on education and gender inequality, which makes sense because with COVID going on, not many people can go to school, and we need more minds to think about how can we solve this? How can we prevent this in the future? Health, well-being, talk about sustainable industry, sustainable food sources, which, now we've, I feel like in the beginning of this COVID situation, everybody flocked to the grocery store and there was no bread, no milk, becoming more reliant on yourself. So I just thought that was an interesting little blurb that they had put in there.
Yeah, it's the impact that COVID-19 has had on the world really kind of reflects our sustainability in general, because it, as you said, it impacts these areas, and I think it really kind of reflects where we're at.
Yeah.
Sustainability wise. And there's this one show that we've been watching called Mars. It's on Netflix. It's really good.
Okay.
You should watch it. It's a weird little TV show. So I don't even know how to explain this. So the show is following these people as not real life people, but these characters as they go to Mars to settle it.
Okay.
So first people on Mars and creating civilization on Mars. And so the challenges that they face and how the technology required to do that. And so that's part of the show. But then they also throw in these clips from the year 2016.
Okay.
So real life, where they're talking to scientists about. So one of the things is they talk to Elon Musk about getting to Mars and what's required. And so every time they face a certain challenge for on Mars, they then go back and talk to actual scientists. Is like, how would we address this? Is like a common issue that we may face when we go to Mars. How would we address this?
Okay.
Anyways, so Mars is really cool. But one of the things that they talked about was the Arctic fires.
Oh.
And so back 2016, 2015, 17, somewhere around there,
Okay.
We were having these Arctic fires that were actually releasing a disease. It was anthrax.
Oh.
And so there was anthrax outbreaks in the tundra in the Arctic Circle.
Oh.
And so they were talking about how climate change was impacting our kind of like infectious diseases and overall human health and well-being.
Yeah.
And so I just thought that was interesting. I was just like, wait, what? There's anthrax
in the Arctic? Like, what? Yeah, I think that's really interesting. And I think that just goes to show how everything is connected. There's nothing that you do that won't affect something else somewhere, somehow, in some way. So I that just, I just hope that makes people
Everything's
more.
connected in
I
this
know.
little spider web.
We're all connected somehow. So yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Huh.
So it was I liked it, and I was just like, they were talking about outbreaks, infectious diseases and outbreaks that can occur, and we were just like, this is so relevant to today. Like, what the heck?
Yeah.
Because this was filmed before the coronavirus outbreak.
Yeah.
And so we're just like, this is just, they're telling us this can happen.
It's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. I mean, yeah, that's insane, but not surprising. Like,
Right.
I'm not shocked.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and I think one thing that I noticed with all these sustainable development goals and where the world is doing good at, I thought for the most part countries were doing pretty good with the like health and well-being. So for the most part, like poverty, I wrote it down. I had like a summary. I don't know. I guess I didn't
That's
write
fine.
it down. But so we were doing really good with poverty overall. Like there's definitely some people who weren't doing great,
Oh,
but
yeah.
like not too many people were in the red. Mostly Africa. Sorry,
Okay.
Africa. But we were doing well on the social aspects of things. And so I was kind of wondering about that. I was like, well, why is that? Like, why are we struggling so much with the environmental? And I realized that not even the last decade, but lately, a lot of humanitarian causes have been towards improving, reducing poverty. Poverty has been a big driving issue in the world, not just like in the U.S., but so like people going to Africa and trying to improve poverty.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean they did great, but that's been a huge focal point for like humanitarian reasons, global humanitarian reasons. And I think a lot of people we've been working on that
Since the beginning of time.
Yeah. So like we've been constantly trying to improve that. And so I think that's why so many countries are doing well in those goals. And so I thought that was an interesting factor. But, the environmental movement hasn't really.
Well, I think the thing with that, I mean, you can't go to somebody and be like, hey, can you sign this petition that's for poverty? I mean, like, let's not go over and help these people. Let's just let them suffer. I mean, I think that's a cause that everyone can rally behind. I mean, but with the environment, you get people that like, well, you're going to take away my well-being. That's going to be really expensive. You put solar panels on my home, you're going to increase the price. I can't afford it. Well, I live in a food desert. I can't get all the way. I can't take the bus to go. There's going to be so many reasons that people are going to be against it. And if we
Against environmental
movements, it's easier to find the drawbacks to it. But I think what I found interesting with Iceland, the reason that their transition was so quick is because everybody was feeling the negative effects from it.
Yeah.
And I think right now, not everybody is feeling the negative effects of climate change.
Mm-hmm.
And if they are, it's so small that they're just like, oh, I can adapt to this little thing.
Yeah.
And I think, unfortunately, it's going to take a really big hit for everyone to be like, okay, maybe this is something we should be doing.
Yeah.
I hope we don't get to that point. I really hope not. But I think it's going to take a lot of work to get people there.
Yeah. That's something I've noticed whenever I see like environmental documentaries where this company is poisoning this water and causing cancer in the whole population.
Yeah.
That happens so often. It's ridiculous. But when it first starts out, a lot of people are like, well, I don't care. It's not impacting me. If anything, they're giving me a job. So
Yeah.
I get money out of this company. So I don't care.
Exactly.
But then as soon as it impacts a person, they get cancer. They're like, oh shit.
Yeah.
Like, okay, we need to address
this.
this.
Needs to stop.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so people really don't look at problems unless it affects them.
And I think that's a human thing. I think that can apply for every person around the world to some degree.
Yeah.
So, and I think with us, I mean, I guess my question for you is like, how did you get into sustainability? Like what was that moment for you? Where was that like, oh shit, I need to do something?
Well, yeah, I always was interested. I always liked nature. I like being out in the woods. And so for me, I started getting into like animal welfare.
Mm-hmm.
And I started learning the impacts of agriculture on not just the environment, but the animals themselves. And I really didn't like being a part of that.
Yeah.
Causing that stuff to occur. And so that kind of led me down this path. And then I was just like, I'm learning about some of the environmental devastation that's going on. And I was just like, I don't like trees being cut down. I don't like seeing water being poisoned. I don't like, biodiversity loss. I don't like seeing animals going extinct because of what we're doing. And so I guess I just really have a love and respect for the environment. I'm not exactly the greatest sustainability person because I'm just like, I just really care about the environment.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I've kind of grown from there. Like, I'm like, okay, well, we need to make sure that economic well-being is occurring, and we need to make sure that everybody is healthy and happy. And I still just care about the trees.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah,
Nice.
so
Okay.
I feel like that's a lot of sustainability people.
I think so too. I think for most of us, there really wasn't that like, oh, I was affected firsthand by something, someone did, or, by climate change. It was just kind of like, well, we love the environment. We love, we don't want to see it get taken advantage of.
Yeah.
So, and I think sustainability just fell into our laps. Because I feel like I was just like reaching and searching for something that aligned with my ideals, and finally, someone was just like, well, what about this new thing called sustainability? And I'm just like, that's perfect.
Right. It just it fits into, maybe we're idealists,
Maybe,
but you know what? That's okay.
that's fine.
Somebody's gotta push this darn
I guess we'll be the ones to start it,
to drive it.
Yeah, we're just full force.
Well, so I think we've pretty much covered a lot of the topics today that we wanted to. One thing that I kind of want to maybe close on
Okay.
is it kind of relates to the fact that, I kind of just like nature.
Okay.
And I feel like a lot of the environmental movement is we just like nature. And we're not really good at talking to people. And I feel like there's this really big void where these people who are environmentalists, they're doing a really horrible job of public outreach.
Yeah.
And so I think it's great that the Sustainable Development Goals, they're trying to make things more accessible to people and for people to better understand. I think they have some ways to go, but they're trying, and I think that's It's a really important part. And I also like the fact that someone like Zac Efron, who has no sustainability or environmental background, he wants to try and use his status to bring this information to the public.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like that shouldn't be the job of Zac Efron.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's something that people, sustainability professionals, these active environmental activists, we should be trying to spread this information in a way that everybody can understand, so that we don't have people denying that the climate change is occurring
Mm-hmm.
because they just don't trust the damn tree huggers. Like,
Yeah.
I think we have a really long way to go, and I think that's something we really need to be working on, is to better provide information and to better spread information, and for it to be easily digestible for people who aren't in the environmental field, who maybe don't really care about what the heck is happening in the rainforest.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's something that we really need to be working towards. So I think it's great that Zac Efron is trying to bring this stuff forward, but why isn't it a sustainability professional
Mm-hmm.
who's had this education and who has this knowledge
Yeah.
to be able to go more in depth in the way for people to understand, and also make it entertaining, like Zac Efron was able to do. I mean, he was awkward, but
Yeah.
it was cute. It was cute.
He was cute. He made it cute. He made it adorable. Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you. And I mean, I applaud Zac Efron for getting out there and doing that. And, you know, I don't know what his background is before all this. I mean, I'm assuming he has some sort of passion for it, for him to sign up for this project.
Well, yeah, I don't know how they got into this.
I don't know. That's
this
something I'd
was
like to learn more.
Something his idea, or some people just recruited him. They're like,
Hey,
we need a hot bod to come talk about sustainability.
And you're like always in nature. You seem to be really outdoorsy. Do you want to do this? You know.
Well, I know he did mention that his father worked at a nuclear power plant. So
Oh yeah,
maybe,
I forgot he said that.
Maybe he's kind of interested in some of that from his father.
Maybe, yeah.
But
You know, I think again, I said this in the beginning. I think this is a great first step. You know, I think it's gonna intrigue people who don't really know too much about us, and they're like, "Hey, there's Zac Efron. He's shirtless. All right, I get to see.
I guess I can listen to this.
I guess I have to for an hour." And then hopefully along the way, it brings awareness. It sparks their interest to watch other documentaries, listen to podcasts with experts, to read up on articles, to then start getting involved, to start talking about it. And, you know, hopefully that can be a great way to get this movement, I feel like, back on track to where it was, and to build that trust. Because I feel like the reason a lot of people aren't listening, or they've branded us as like crazy tree huggers, is because that trust has been broken.
Yeah.
Because they only see environmentalists getting in other people's faces saying you're the problem.
Yeah. Right.
So, you know, I think if we can find a way to collectively come together to be more solution based and not so
Pointing fingers
and creating excuses. Okay, yeah, we know where we went wrong. Okay, let's go forward. We don't need to live in the past of what you did wrong. Let's create solutions. This is it, and build that trust.
Yeah.
So
I feel so bad for. Sorry, I just had a
No,
thought
go
about Greta Thunberg.
Oh.
Thunberg. She's so sweet, and she did. When the outbreak occurred, the coronavirus started becoming prevalent. She started doing her Friday strikes, just with the picture at home, and I applaud her, like, keep sticking through it. And but then all this Black Lives Matter stuff started happening, and people started protesting all around the world, and she's still over there posting her little Instagram picture for the climate strike, and it's just like, oh, it kind of just got pushed to the wayside.
yeah,
So I really hope with everything going on, it's like the sustainability is really important, and it's not just the environment. It is also about Black Lives Matter and making social justice important as well.
Oh yeah.
So anyways, I really appreciate you being on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me back. This is always so fun.
Right.
This was great.
Get to talk about sustainability.
Yeah.
Unlike with their family, I feel like
Yeah.
I get
It just kind of goes over their head.
Yeah.
They have good intentions. They want to hear, but I know.
or like I won't say it. But yes, thank you for coming on, and I really hope this podcast can really bring what we're talking about forward and hopefully be somewhat easily digestible. I'll work on it. I'll get better at explaining things.
Yeah.
That's the goal.
You'll do good.
Anyways, thank you for joining me.
Yeah. Thanks, Nicole.
Have a good one.
Thanks.